I want to get your guys' reaction to some of the more interesting deals we've seen thus far. So first off, Gordon Hayward. He leaves the Celtics after 3 injury-plagued seasons to sign a 4-year deal worth $120 million with the Charlotte Hornets. Jackson.
I thought Hayward was crazy to opt out, and then I realized that some of these guys that were a lot worse than Gordon Hayward were getting paid a lot of damn money. And somehow I don't get the steal from a Hornets perspective. I really don't. I mean, you're dealing with a team that you just got rid of Nicholas Batum and tried to shed off his $27 million. And this is just a year removed after they weren't willing to pay Kemba Walker. So you settle for Gordon Hayward, a guy who came off the bench for a large portion of last year with Boston. And Gordon Hayward was good last year. You got to give him credit. Coming off that injury, it's a tough injury to come off of. But to give a guy like Hayward at this point, who is good and makes his teammates better, and I like his brand of basketball, but to give him $30 million a year over 4, this is a sell contract for me. I don't like this one bit.
It's such a weird situation, as you mentioned, and I thought it hit pretty well, Jackson. It's just like, of all the places you're expecting Gordon Hayward to sign, it's Charlotte. It was just such a like I saw it on my phone, right? You get the Woj bomb on Twitter. You get the notification that comes up, and it's like, wait, did I read that right? Charlotte? It's just it was such a weird signing, and not something that we had expected. Honestly, I would have been more. I would have expected more that it was the Knicks or something like that. You know, the Knicks are just desperately scrambling to try and get someone of value to come and play for their organization. Whereas Charlotte, they're kind of in between. And that's the biggest thing for me. It's like, what kind of organization are the Charlotte Hornets? Are they sort of a smaller market team that knows that they have to build through the draft? Is it sort of the San Antonio model, or are they a team that knows that they can attract big-time free agents in, you know, whatever organization you're going to talk about, whether it be the Lakers or Miami or some of those traditional NBA powers? And to me, it just seems like it was such a weird thing because it leaves Charlotte in the middle. Gordon Hayward isn't this big-time free agent. They gave him big-time free agent money, but he's not – it's not to diminish. He's a very good player, but he's probably not someone who you are sitting there feeling good about as your highest-paid number one option going forward. It's not – this isn't Butler anymore. He's got to actually produce in the NBA. So are you building through the draft? This is a team that – selected 3 overall. It's LaMelo Ball. Are you trying to bring in young players and figure things out that way? Or are you trying to be a team that's going to go out and spend and try and be active as much as possible in free agency? Now, those two things are not necessarily mutually exclusive, but for a guy like Hayward, who is, I think, a glorified, I'll backtrack that, but is maybe a role player on steroids, can do more for you, but is a guy who needs to be in the right situation. He reminds me a lot of Chris Bosh in that way, where it's not that they're similar players in the way, in the style of play,
but they're roles.
Just a guy who can be an all-star as a role player, but is not going to be successful when he is not in the right situation. That was, to me, the most interesting thing, or the most surprising and puzzling thing about this. It doesn't feel like Gordon Hayward is going to be in the right situation, and he's making a lot of money doing that.
I think you made a very good point by saying that Charlotte is stuck in the middle, and that's the worst place you can be in the NBA. That to me is NBA purgatory, where you're stuck hovering around for a playoff spot. It's kind of honestly where they were with Kemba for the large portion of his time in Charlotte. That's where they were. They were stuck in the middle. They were a walking first-round exit because they would find a way to play the Heat every year and get swept in that regard. So that's where I'm at with that deal. I'm completely on board with it. I think Chris Bosh is a better player than you're letting on a little bit, because I think he was at a point where, listen, he was a superstar in Toronto, and he was really damn good, but just didn't have the surrounding pieces. And listen, he was the third wheel when he was in Miami, but he was still a really good third wheel. So that's where I'm at with that. But I'm in full agreement. I don't like this signing. Let's go to the next one, Quigs.
Yeah, so number 2, Brandon Ingram re-signs with the New Orleans Pelicans for 5 years, $158 million. This is after his first season in New Orleans.
That's an interesting one too. I like this deal better. I mean, it's coming off his rookie max extension. But he was terrific last year, and I think it's going to be really interesting to look at how he handles playing a full season with Zion, and how much his role will change, given that Zion's going to be one of the main guys in that offense. So I like the deal. I think from a talent perspective, Ingram can do it. Maybe jump the gun a little early, giving him that much money after really only one good season. But overall, I'm into buying on young talent, and for that reason, I like this deal.
Especially if you are New Orleans, who has made it their priority to build through the draft. There's never been a player who sits there and is going to be ultra successful at attracting free agents. Now, Brandon Ingram was superb this past year. 24, 6, and 4 is really good. And at some level, they're worried about going forward. Are you going to look at this like an Anthony Davis situation where you're trying to build that surrounding cast? And it didn't work out towards the end with Anthony Davis. And maybe that's the impetus for saying, you know what, we better lock him up sooner rather than later. Because I agree, you probably want more of a sample size than just the 1 year and to fit New Orleans, especially when you want to figure out how exactly he's going to coexist with your number 1 overall pick in Zion Williamson and a guy you have a lot invested in. But the future is bright for New Orleans, and I think Brandon Ingram can be at the forefront of that. He has quietly become one of the better players in the NBA. I mean, he's really that talented. We knew the talent was there. It was about getting him to continue to grow into that. You love the size that he brings to the table, and that length is somebody who's just special from a physical standpoint. So I like what Brandon Ingram has done. And I think if you want to keep him around, if you're a team like New Orleans, who is not this crazy destination in the past of we're going to get a bunch of free agents, you got to strike while the iron's hot. And Brandon Ingram is a guy that they trust. And to make the deal made sense, even if it is maybe a year too early and too much money, it's better to be safe than sorry than walk into another situation where you're saying, okay, where am I trading Brandon Ingram to now?
Just a thing to note also, Drew Holiday obviously got traded to the Bucks, which I thought was maybe one of the most underrated moves of this offseason. I love Drew Holiday, great defender, one of the best two-way guards in the entire NBA, but that means even more touches for Brandon Ingram. And I know Holiday wasn't a ball-dominant guard, but now Ingram is going to get more touches that he maybe would have lost to Zion. So that's something to monitor. Our final deal in Miami, Quiggs, what we got?
Yep. So fresh off their run to the finals, Miami big Bam Adebayo just re-signed for $195 million over 5 years.
I like this deal. I think Bam was the most improved player in the NBA going each of the last 2 seasons, to be quite honest with you. He's one of the most unique players in the league because his ability to play defense at all levels, given his size and athleticism, is very unique. And his ability to score really at all levels has expanded because he can now shoot the ball. He's an incredible rebounder on both sides of the floor. But I think his defense is the biggest thing that he brings to Miami because it's not only an individual perspective, but Jimmy Butler, he's a big part of that culture with him on the defensive side of the floor. And he may not be as talkative of a leader as Butler is, but he's certainly as effective as Jimmy Butler is. So I love this deal for Miami. I love this deal for Bam. He deserves it as well. And I think he's a guy, as long as he's able to stay healthy, there's no ceiling for this guy going forward. If he continues to develop the jump shot, I mean, I could see him easily being a guy who can put up, if Butler wasn't there, he's a guy who I think could put up 25 and 12 each night if he wanted to with 5 assists. But in that balanced offense, he's a guy that can go off on any given night.
Well, I certainly agree with you in liking this deal for Bam. Anytime you take $195 million to the bank, that's not a bad day. So, yes, I certainly like it for him. But as you pointed out, he certainly deserves it. And to me, the other angle to take this, or one of the other aspects of it, is that he has continued to improve every year he's been in the NBA. And that, to me, is the player that you want to invest in. It's the guys that improve. And even circling back to Brandon Ingram in that same way, that's why teams want to give these types of players that type of money and these types of contracts, because they're going to get better. And that's, to me, the biggest thing about Bam Adebayo is You mentioned he has become more explosive in different aspects of their offense. Well, that has been a continued progression as he has extended his range and become more of a complete player on the offensive side of the floor, and also being a great rebounder and a rim protector and everything that he does and does for that Miami team, and was a big reason why they were where they were at the end of it in the bubble in Orlando. And he is, as you mentioned, is there a better big man in the NBA? I don't think so. And that contract proves it, right? That's at the end of the day where it is in a game in a game in the NBA where we are trending away from big men. Bam Adebayo has found sort of that way of making himself useful. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but we've seen it with guys like Joel Embiid, who are just so one-dimensional. As another guy, you say, okay, he's a really good big man, but there are limitations to his game. You don't see that in that same way with Bam Adebayo, and he's deserving of every penny of the contract that he just signed, and certainly good for Miami to be able to keep him around.
Let's not forget about Anthony Davis. He's not the best big man in the NBA, but he's up there for sure.
See, Anthony Davis is such of a freak that I don't even think of him as a big man.
You think of him as just his own tier. He's a positionless basketball player.
Anthony Davis isn't a position, doesn't play a position. He just is Anthony Davis. So forgive me. Yes, I agree with you there. If we're considering Anthony Davis a big man, it's just, I guess I don't.
We can say the same thing about Bam, though, in terms of that, in terms of his style of basketball as well. But point taken on AD. But obviously I'm in full agreement with you. I think we both voiced our opinions there.